Mylan CEO Heather Bresch joins us now for an exclusive interview. Welcome back to the show, Heather. It's nice to have you here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So talk a little bit about the drugs that you're making right now and what's in demand and what's not as a result of the COVID-19 crisis.
So as you guys know, obviously this global pandemic has hit in many aspects of the healthcare supply chain. So, we've seen demand in everything from important ICU medications, anti-infectives, aside from some of the drugs that have been talked about as potential treatments or cures for COVID-19. So there's really across the board, especially from hospitalization. And then, of course, you have patients just very important, their day-to-day maintenance of disease management. So everything from cancer treatments to diabetic patients, I think get very weary when we're under conditions like we are right now.
Heather, you mentioned potential treatments for COVID. What is your latest take on hydroxychloroquine and whether it will eventually be seen as a good treatment for COVID, or the latest little bits of results we've seen suggested otherwise?
I think importantly, clinical trials, we do them for a reason. It's because the science bears out when you have enough statistically sampling of a population to know if something's working or not, or importantly, what the benefits or negatives are for a drug. So, as you guys know, there's still important clinical trials happening. WHO, the Solidarity trial that's testing multiple drugs. So, I think from our perspective, it's still very much we need to let the science play out. And I think in the meantime, I'm happy that we were able to step in with medication and help the supply, because as you guys know, there was a huge surge in demand as the drug was being talked about, and there were important patient population, the current lupus and RA patients that were still in much need of this patient as it was scarce.
To your point about we need to wait for the results of various scientific trials, were you surprised to hear the president speak so warmly about the drug as a potential treatment ahead of some of those results?
Look, I think we all want to be hopeful and want there to be a treatment. But I just will continue to say, I think the importance of waiting for science to play out is just, I think we've seen how important that is. We're living it. And so when people get perhaps false hopes or are trying to, get ahead of what we know from a science perspective, usually that doesn't have great outcomes. So I'm hopeful that we've had a little bit of a taste of getting ahead of ourselves, and that, people will step back and will let the science play out, because I think, as you know, there's many drugs that are being tested and hopefully will help at least people dealing with COVID have a more manageable way of treating the disease until we ultimately find a cure.
There's been a lot of focus as a result of this whole crisis and pandemic, Heather, about the supply chains for medications and generics. Where are most of your drugs made, and is it realistic that we could see increased production in the United States?
So look, one of the things that over the last decade that has been a huge benefit to us is the diversification of our supply chain, everything from the starting ingredients to finished dosage form manufacturing. We have over 40 facilities across multiple continents and countries, which has truly allowed us to not only have a globalized supply chain, but have facilities and being near patients that need the treatment. So as we think about, as COVID hit different areas of the world at different points in time, able to navigate and leverage the different aspect of our supply chain really allowed us to really have minimal disruption. And I think just overall as an industry, the reality is that we have beyond a global economy, and certainly when it comes to the availability of medicines, many of the starting ingredients are, of course, have been for decades, been made offshore. Over the years, certainly our finished dosage form manufacturing has continued to move more offshore. I think there's absolutely things that we should be doing, countries need to be doing as they think about strategic supply versus global needs. And I think it's important that we do some of that basic blocking and tackling to make sure we have products when we need them. But at the end of the day, Mylan's global platform has really positioned us to be able to continue to fill patients' needs with these critical medicines at this very, during these unprecedented times.
So are you saying that the U.S. government should be doing more right now to prepare for the second wave, which the doctors think is inevitably coming in the fall when it comes to sourcing either ingredients, production, or just supply of these critical medications that we're going to need to get us through?
I think as you think about any preparedness, having a list of critical medicines, strategically sourcing, stockpiling those medicines are extremely important. We've now lived what it looks like when you don't have a supply chain or a stockpiling that's been consistently and sustainably supplied. And so, again, I know it sounds like kind of basic blocking and tackling, but these things are incredibly important to be prepared. So whether it's for the second wave of this that everyone is talking about that will hit in the fall, or just for whenever the next crisis happens, we know it's not a matter of if, it's when. And that's not anything on this administration. As a country, we've never had some of this basic blocking and tackling that would set up kind of a macro architecture that there's a good coordination of important products, 100, 150, 200 products that we know, from hospitalization to maintenance medications to antibiotics, that become incredibly important in times like this, that you want that on a consistent basis, not just in the reaction. We reacted to anthrax, we reacted to H1N1.
Is any country doing that? Is anyone doing that?
I would say this. I think that COVID has certainly exposed the weaknesses for countries across the globe. Some countries perhaps have more domestic manufacturing than we have here in the U.S., but no country is capable of making all the medicines they need for their population. So working with strategic alliances has never been more important to make sure you're having a stockpile that can treat your population.
Heather Bresch, we hope the folks in D.C. are watching today. Thanks for joining us.